Members, and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Full Council. I am Councillor Justin Wrench and I will be chairing this meeting this evening. Before we start tonight's business, please can I remind everyone that this meeting is being webcast via the Council's YouTube channel. And please can everyone in the chamber please ensure that their mobile phones and devices are switched to silent to avoid any disruptions. This meeting is scheduled for 3 hours, and I would be grateful if everyone could ensure that they keep their speeches concise and to the issue being considered. If members wish to speak this evening, please can you indicate by clearly raising your hand. Please note that we are not expecting a fire alarm. However, in the event of an alarm, please leave via the fire exits and assemble in the car park. I'll now proceed to the first item of business, agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor John Ball, Councillor James Coleridge, Councillor George Coulthard, Councillor Shirley Mason, Councillor Jackie Pell, Councillor Billy Taylor, Councillor Wendy Taylor, Councillor Moya Thorogood, and Councillor John Hayes. Are there any other apologies that I've not been made aware of? Okay, thank you, members. Oh, sorry, I also did receive apologies for Councillor Ethan Williams as well. We will now proceed to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any disclosable pecuniary interest, other registrable interest, or non-registrable interest that they wish to declare this evening? If so, please can you state the item and the nature of your interest? Councillor Thorogood.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Having spoken to the monitoring officer, I have a other registrable interest in that I'm the chair of CAUSE, which is Kelburn Against Urban Sprawl, which is a group that is set up to protect the village identity of Kelburn interfering and also to inform residents about planning applications. I've also objected in 2021 to Monk's Farm, which is the 600 houses. And because of that reason, that is the other registrable interest. So, having spoke to the MO, I will speak and then at the right time and then leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorogood. I will make amendments to the order this evening to allow you to speak as soon as possible. Okay, thank you. Are there any other interests? Okay, thank you, members. For those members who have declared the registrable interest in accordance with the Code of Conduct, as this meeting is open to the public, they, as I've already said, they may address full council on the local plan, but are not permitted to participate in the debate or vote and must then leave the chamber. So once the opening presentation has been made, Councillor Thorogood will be invited to speak, and once they have spoken, I'll ask him to leave the chamber before we consider this matter further. We'll now proceed to agenda item 3, the minutes of the previous meeting. We are asked to approve the minutes of the meeting of Full Council held on the 8th of December 2025, which have been circulated to all members and published on the Council's website. Please can I have a proposer to approve the minutes as an accurate record? Sorry, thank you, Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I took advice from officers this afternoon. I think there's a couple of typos. They're quite minor, but they did ask me if I could raise them now.
Yep, okay.
So, minute 41, where it talks about 12 districts of Essex would be allocated 2 district seats on the strategic board.
Sorry, Councillor Abbott, can I just confirm which page that was on?
I haven't got the page number.
No, that's absolutely fine. I'll keep scanning. Okay.
After strategic board, I think that of shouldn't be in there. So it should read strategic board, comma, which would be non-voting positions.
Okay.
And then carrying on that sentence, alongside the current upper tier authorities of Essex, Thurrock and Southend and Thurrock, not or. Because otherwise it's an alternative, and I think it's both of them. And then minute 43, the questions from myself and Councillor Beavis. It should say regarding instead of which regarded.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. With those amendments, could I seek an approver, please? Thank you, Councillor Butland. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Beavis. The minutes have been moved and seconded as an accurate record. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you, members. The minutes are approved, and I will now sign the minutes. I will now proceed to agenda item 4, public question time. Members, we have 5 registered speakers this evening. Registered speakers have 3 minutes each to make their statements or ask any question. A warning bell will be sounded at the expiry of the 3 minutes, and the registered speaker must cease speaking at that time if they have not already done so. As all speakers are here this evening to speak on the same item, Councillor Spray will respond after the final speaker this evening. So firstly, Samantha Selby, you wish to speak in respect of King's Dean. Please come forward to the speakers table. You have 3 minutes to ask your question or to make a statement.
Is that right?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay.
Thank
So,
you.
how do I address you? What do I call you?
Chairman.
Chairman. Okay, thank you. And before I start, is it possible, just because I like to know who I'm speaking to, the people that are on the planning committee, could you raise your hand so I know who you are? Is that okay? Yes, the local planning committee. Is that okay?
Yeah. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Just humour me. It's just nice to know that I'm addressing the right people. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I represent the families of Kelvedon and Fearing, and we feel really let down. We've had to educate ourselves on planning matters simply because our trust in you has eroded. I've attended planning meetings, I've watched them on the YouTube, and we've seen that numbers and figures in the documents that have been put forward to the committee have been wrong. You are proposing to dump 5,600 houses and 32,000 cars per day into one corner of this district. Why? Because it's got a railway station? It's certainly not because there is a good road network, because the A12 and the A120 have both been cancelled in their upgrades. The biggest employer in this area is the NHS, followed by retail and then education. Stansted is projected to employ 17,000 people. Our 2 hospitals are not near railway stations. Stansted has a station, but to travel there from Kelvedon requires up to 3 changes, taking up to 2.5 hours. People use the road network in this county to move around, not the rail network. As a mum of adult children and a teenager, what matters to me is their health and happiness. 2 of my children have serious mental health and physical health conditions. My adult son needs to live close by to me. And I'm not alone in this, wanting my children and my family to live near me. And I'm sure many of you want the same. When you look at the map of our area, all of the proposed developments are in the bottom part, the south. All of them, 90% of them. So what about the people who live in the north? What if they want to live near their family? What if they want their kids close to them? Or if they want to work in Stansted? This council is saying that they can't. They have to live near Kelvedon because that's where you're putting 90% of the houses. And then they would have to drive 30 or 40 minutes on a good day to get where they really want to be. The personal effect of this ill thought out, woefully researched and many of my colleagues are going to point this out, and woefully costed proposal is enormous. On a personal front, my daughter suffers from extreme anxiety. There are times when I can't get her out of the house. Driving her to school in the morning means we have to go through One Stop Corner in Kelvedon. When there is a problem on the A12 or the A120, it can take 20 minutes to get through that junction. And I've sat in the car with my daughter with her tears rolling down her cheeks because she is so anxious about going to school, to the point where we've had to turn around and go home because the traffic was so bad. It's unacceptable. And this is only going to get worse if you add Kings Dean and Monk's Farm development to the local plan without the required road upgrades. You are asking us, the residents of Kelvedon and Fearing, to live with years of uncertainty without the supporting evidence that the infrastructure is in place. You are asking us to live in limbo. Planning should be about providing clarity, reassurance and trust. You are delivering none of these. You are asking us as local families to absorb the risk while our concerns and questions are ignored. The message from the Planning Committee when we raised questions was the general public don't understand planning. We do.
Thank
We
you.
want to
Sorry,
trust
excuse
you.
me, Samantha, are you able to wrap it up?
Last little bit.
Thank you.
Because I want to trust you guys. We voted for you. I would like to trust you. But you need to step up and do your job properly and produce evidence that is credible, fair, transparently researched, because so far you have not. Planning decisions are not about land use on their own. They're about real lives, and you are playing fast and loose with ours, and it has to stop. Thank you.
Samantha, thank you for your passionate speech this evening and also your questions entwined within that. So the next person to speak is Sharon Brayley, and you wish to speak about evidence and policies. Please come forward to the speaker's table, and you also have 3 minutes to ask your question or to make your statement. Thank you, Sharon. Whenever you're ready. That's good to go. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of queries regarding the RAG scoring assessment. I was hoping to get a fuller explanation of the evidence and the RAG scoring following on from the previous meeting, but despite emailing various councillors, Essex Highways representatives and submitting Freedom of Information Request Acts, no one can seem to answer my questions, which makes me query the whole process and evidence being delivered and being used by this very committee to wave through this policy document in its present form. Why are only 1,850 houses being inputted into the RAG scoring and not 5,000 for Kings Dean? If you say the best policy for future-proof growth and infrastructure funding is by large-scale settlements, what is your spatial policy viability assessment for 5,000 houses? Question 2. Why isn't risk being evaluated in your RAG assessment? Risk and delays cost money and affects deliverability and soundness of your planning policy. Risk is relevant. Braintree District Council has a history of spending money on undeliverable large-scale settlement housing policy, such as e.g. West Hay. Is Kings Dean the new West Hay? Pressing forward with housing before infrastructure once again, and again praying for a modal shift of transport use to improve viability in RAG assessment scores. Who's paying for all the mitigation at the site? It's definitely not viable in its current form, even by your own RAG assessments of only the 1,850 houses scoring 1.31. RAG scoring has been used to critique the various sites put forward for inclusion in the local plan. Kings Dean, like Andrewsville, currently scores poorly on existing sustainability accessibility. As stated previously, congested routes towards the station. As a result, Kings Dean apparent rail proximity does not translate to high-quality, deliverable, sustainable access. In contrast, Andrews Field's relationship with Finch Way corridor seems to be underplayed in the scoring, given that a road and cycle corridor aligns for its connection with Braintree Station. And why is it that Essex Highways has lumped cycling and walking minutes together rather than separating the two, which Parker Strategic has done in their own sustainable transport strategy? Why the RAG methodology places disproportionate emphasis on straight line proximity without testing how people actually get to the station in practice? The apparent advantages of King's Dean is created not by evidence, but by overweighting nominal rail proximity, ignoring site orientation and access quality, failing to reflect congestion, junction need and delivery risk, assumption-less potential scoring, circular reasoning with spatial options assessment. Once real-world conditions are considered, Anglesey's relatively high performance where the constraints of King's Dean are downplayed. On this basis, the RAG system is not robust enough to justify preferred spatial option or to support Regulation 18 consultation. Please reconsider and reject King's Dean. 5,000 houses, poor evidence, no modal shift, no money, no infrastructure and high risk. The Braintree District Plan, as it is unsound by including King's Dean within it. Thank you.
Sharon, thank you also for your questions this evening. And the next person speaking this evening is Lynn Zanata. You wish to speak in respect to King's Dean also. Please come forward to the speaker's table, and you also have 3 minutes to ask your question or to make your statement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. You may start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
There are a number of brownfield sites in and around the Braintree district that could benefit from regeneration. For example, there is an existing site by Station Road in Kelvedon, and one in Silverend on the old Crittall site, which is close to King's Dean. These sites may be easier and quicker to deliver. A report by the Community Planning Alliance titled Homes for Everyone features data showing that there are around 1 million unbuilt homes with planning permission and sufficient brownfield sites to build a further more than 1 million homes. Although central government sets housing targets, it is the local planning authority that chooses where those houses are allocated. Why then can't our council be forward-thinking and adopt a brownfield-first, common-sense approach instead of unpopular urban sprawl? Are members and planning officers aware of the recent government report based on global biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse and national security? This report makes it very clear that should the inevitable happen and certain global ecosystems collapse, the UK will not be self-sufficient when it comes to food production. Clearly then, we need to keep all the agricultural land we can for future necessity. With our country facing increasing threats to food security, why concrete over productive arable land forever? Your own website's natural environment page recognises the importance of rural verges. I quote, giving birds, insects and animals shelter and a source of food. Wildflowers, as well as looking pretty, are a valuable source of food for pollinators like bees and butterflies, insects that are essential to our food chain. Have you any idea how much habitat like this would be destroyed by King's Dean? With regards to the proposed King's Dean site, there is also an urgent need to protect nature and the existing biodiversity that depends on this environment. My family and I, like much of the Kelvedon community, regularly walk the perimeters of these fields. Over the seasons each year, we are treated to sightings and sounds of an array of bird life, including fieldfares, redwings, woodpeckers, to name a few. Redwings are classed as a red list species of conservation concern, as too are skylarks, which can be found specifically on arable land and open fields, nesting on the ground in vegetation which is 20 to 50 centimetres high. We also regularly see bats at dusk. We know access to nature is vital to people's well-being. A wide range of healthcare professionals recognise the benefits of green social prescribing, with NHS England stating that there is strong and growing evidence that nature-based social prescribing plays an important role in improving mental and physical health and reducing loneliness. Kelvedon and Fearing have already absorbed significant new home development, with more afoot. Villagers know that we are privileged to be surrounded by open spaces that are rich in wildlife, and the anger felt at the prospect of this all being bricked over is already clear and evident in our community.
Thank you, Lynn. That was also impressive timing as well, right on the buzzer, so well done. But no, thank you ever so much for your speech and your question. And I will now invite Simon Gibbs to come up to the table. And he also wishes to speak in regards to King's Dean. So good evening, Simon, and you're more than welcome, once the microphone's on, to make your speech. Thank you.
Members of Braintree Council, thank you for allowing me to ask the following questions regarding the proposed inclusion of King's Dean development in the draft plan for the district. I have a lot of sympathy with the constraints you face in trying to formulate a sensible housing plan which does not rip the heart out of the wonderful communities we have in our area. However, I do not believe you have come up with an equitable allocation of sites for development. Why are we being rushed into Section 18 without credible highways data? Why are a number of highly speculative suggestions for traffic mitigation being allowed to go forward without thorough costing, deliverability and feasibility being part of the proposal? To wit, will it really be possible to build a traffic bridge over the main railway line and connect this to the A12? Who will pay? Is the land area even available and owned? How long will it take to construct, bearing in mind the time and disruption caused by the Boreham Road Bridge just down the line? As I live on Church Street, Kelvedon, I'm aware of the current traffic flow over the level crossing and the inconvenience closure would entail. Have the planners been instructed to assess the traffic impact of the current house building and predicted new sites? I refer to both those within the Kelvedon and Fearing area and adjacent developments such as Tiptree and Coggeshall, which are already having a major impact locally and which will only increase as more houses are occupied. Have the planners been instructed to assess the equitability of the proposed development across the district? I feel that we, in Kelvedon and Fearing, are seen as a soft touch due to the proximity of the rail and road lines, without the effect of the poor feeder links to them being considered. Nor have the major impact of road improvement schemes been delayed and cancelled. We can only hope that, if the plan as drafted does not stand up to rigorous scrutiny in light of the above, that the district does not have to fund an expensive redraft. Thank you for listening, and I trust that with your help, the upcoming debate and open public consultation will result in positive action that improves the lives of all the people in our district and mitigates the effects of neighbouring developments. Thank you. Did I get in?
Thank you ever so much, Simon. So we now have our final speaker for this evening, and I would like to invite Josh Pearl, who will also wish to speak in respects to King's Dean. So please come forward to the table, and whenever you're ready, you may start.
Forgive me if I don't keep to the 3 minutes, but I'll try and keep it as concise as possible.
Thank you.
So, I'm speaking tonight as a 29-year-old ex-Metropolitan Police officer who bought my first home on Kelvedon High Street and intend on being part of the community for decades to come. For people in Kelvedon and Fearing, the King's Dean local plan is not an abstract policy, it's about everyday life. The everyday life questions are whether roads that are already unable to handle current traffic volumes will become gridlocked and impassable, whether the village children can walk to school safely when potentially 10,000 new cars are introduced to our streets, or whether emergency services can reach those people in care homes when they need it the most. Throughout this process, we've been told that this plan represents these hard decisions that you'll have to make, but I would like to quite challenge that. A hard decision would be standing up to central government and saying, we cannot responsibly deliver development on this scale without the infrastructure to support it. A hard decision would be demanding the widening of the A12, a road thousands of people rely on daily for their commute, which is becoming a bit of a death trap. A hard decision would be pursuing a safer, more balanced approach to meeting housing targets across the district, rather than concentrating thousands of homes next to villages already absorbing significant growth. Instead, what many residents see is a plan that is an easy way out option, being pushed through by councillors in this very room. These points that I make are not baseless either. We see adverts from Essex County Council pushing a local nature recovery strategy, and yet here we are talking about destroying it in the very same county. There are councillors in this very room pushing this through who campaigned against overdevelopment to get elected to their positions in the first place. The last time I was here, I laughed with my head in my hands in disbelief. And in that moment, I saw a councillor in this room turn to her colleague and say, "What's his problem?" and pointing me out. So let me answer that clearly. My problem is not that difficult choices exist. It's that, other than very few, genuine leadership appears to be absent in this room. Leadership listens, engages, and treats public concern as legitimate and not inconvenient. Leadership is not doing what's easiest. Leadership is doing what is responsible, what is right, and what is better for the people, not for yourselves. So who out of you is going to step up? My message tonight is not to you, the councillors really, or anyone in this room, but it's to the residents watching at home, watching clips of this on social media. We cannot accept this. We are the people, and we, tend to get our own way. Hold those entrusted to lead this community and the communities that you all have, wherever you're watching from, accountable for the decision making that they choose to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Josh. Again, I will in a moment be able to hand over to Councillor Spray. So that concludes the evening's public question time session. Councillor Spray, is there anything, or would you like to respond at this opportunity? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. And I would just like to thank all 5 speakers who've taken the trouble to come along this evening and make their points, which they have done clearly and, as the Chairman said, very passionately. It is very much appreciated by this council when residents take the trouble to come to meetings and to speak. I'm not going to respond right now at this point to the comments and the questions you've made, because I am going to cover those points in the statement, which I will be making shortly. But I want to thank you for coming, and please do stay and listen to the debate. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. To Samantha, Sharon, Lynn, Simon and Josh, again, I'd just like to echo Councillor Spray's comments there. You've clearly well read up on this issue that is affecting your community. You've stood forward as local residents, and it's always welcome, because the vast majority of our meetings that we do hold, we do have an empty back of the chamber. To see so many of you here tonight, it's important you have this opportunity to express your views. So you're more than welcome to remain and watch the remainder of this meeting. Alternatively, you may also wish to leave at this time. If you are willing to stay, I will now proceed to agenda item 5, announcements and statements from the Chairman and Leader of the Council. I don't intend to give too much of an overview this evening because there's far more important matters to be discussing. But since our last meeting of full council, I've had the privilege of attending 12 events across the district, as well as hosting my Christmas reception and service. Our Christmas gathering began with hospitality in this chamber, where members, local charities and volunteers groups joined together. We then moved across the way to St Peter's Church for a beautiful service of readings and carols. The St Peter's Church, Great Bradford's Junior School and Memcap choirs all gave their wonderful performances that brought the season to life. Their contributions created a joyful and inclusive atmosphere that reflected the very, very best of our district. I'm also pleased to share that the proceeds from the raffle were donated to First Stop in Braintree, supporting their invaluable work. I must update members and council on the resignation of former councillor Tom Walsh. I would also like to acknowledge Tom, who represented Coggeshall with diligence and sincerity. I'm sure you agree as a councillor, he was always exceptionally prepared for meetings and never short of a thoughtful question or two, often the ones that needed asking. His commitment to good governance and steady presence will be missed. Sadly, I have to update Council on the passing of two former councillors. Firstly, Mrs Jennifer Smith, a Conservative, elected to the Braintree District Council in July 2008 and serving until April 2011, representing Braintree East Ward. And also Mrs Beryl Gage from the Housestead Residents Association, who was elected in 1999 and served continuously until 2011, representing the Housestead St Andrews Ward. We're grateful for their years of service and the contributions they made to our communities. So thank you, members. I would like to now invite Councillor Graham Butland, Leader of the Council, to make any announcements. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman. Members be aware that a lot has been happening on the local government reorganisation front, etc. I'm not intending to make an announcement tonight because I think members of the public in the public gallery really want us to get in to the discussion which they've come for. I did hold a briefing meeting for group leaders on Friday, and I will make a fuller statement to our our next council meeting in a fortnight's time. So I will not go any further tonight so we can get on with the main business, which I think most people in the public gallery will want to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butland. Members, we will now deal with agenda item 6, the draft local plan, Regulation 18 consultation. This report item starts at page 5 of tonight's agenda, and the recommendations are set out in section 2 of the report on pages 5 and 6. Further to the guidance issued with the agenda, this item will be presented by Councillor Gabrielle Spray, Cabinet Member for Planning, and also Sarah Ashton, Head of Planning. Before we commence this item, I can confirm that no amendments have been received. Please can I remind members who have declared an other registrable interest that I'll be inviting you to speak following the presentation by Councillor Spray and Mrs Ashton. Once you have spoken, I will then ask you to leave the chamber. So please can I invite Councillor Gabrielle Spray to move the recommendations as set out in section 2 of the report on pages 5 and 6 of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As the Chairman has said, the recommendations are 3 on pages 5 and 6. They are to agree the content of the draft updated Braintree District Local Plan, as set out in Appendix 1, to delegate authority to the Head of Planning in consultation with the Chair of the Local Plan Subcommittee to approve the sustainability appraisal and strategic environmental assessment which will accompany the draft updated local plan as part of Regulation 18 consultation process, and to approve the commencement of a 6-week period of public consultation on the draft updated Braintree District Local Plan in accordance with the requirements set out in Regulation 18. I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. Can I please have a seconder? Councillor Sphere, thank you. Do you wish to reserve your right to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sphere. So, Councillor Spray and Mrs Ashton, please may I invite you to make the presentation on the local plan.
Thank you, Chairman. And through you, I'm very pleased to present this report to members this evening. This document is an early draft of this authority's proposed local plan, a revised and updated version to replace the 2022 adopted local plan. I don't think I need to remind members how important this document is, but I want to start by making one thing clear. What I'm asking Council tonight is not to approve the sites or policies contained in this draft local plan, but to agree the recommendation that this draft goes forward to the Regulation 18 consultation. There is an important difference between those two things, and I like to think that all members appreciate that, but I do believe that there is still a perception amongst some residents of this district that because sites have been allocated by the local plan subcommittee and policies discussed, that that's it. end of story, and that any consultation is just a tick box exercise. And that is most certainly not the case. The 6-week Reg 18 consultation is required for a reason. It's to allow anyone, residents, business owners, landowners, developers, agents, parish councils and district councillors to comment on this draft plan and suggest amendments. All comments will be logged by the planning policy team and then reviewed and considered by the local plan subcommittee during a series of meetings following the consultation. Amendments can and probably will be made. There will follow the Reg 19 consultation, and this allows for comments on the soundness of the plan before the plan is then submitted to the Planning Inspectorate for examination. And just a reminder to everyone, it is the Planning Inspector, he or she who is appointed, who will have the final say on the soundness of our local plan. I know there have been comments made that the process seems rushed. I disagree, although I acknowledge that we are working to a very tight timescale, and I will come on to that in a moment. To anyone who thinks decisions have been hurried or that this is simply a tick box exercise, I would encourage them to look on the Council's YouTube channel, find 1 or 2 of the local plan subcommittee meetings from last year and take a look. There was a suggestion from Speaker that decisions have been made even before the committee met and debated. Honestly, that simply isn't true. Councillors are, of course, provided with information when the agendas are published, but it's a constitutional requirement of members of both the Planning Committee and the Local Plan Subcommittee that they come to meetings with an open mind, listen, take part in a debate before voting on whatever the subject matter is. There were many thoughtful, considered debates, particularly on the large sites. Not all committee members agreed on everything, far from it, and some decisions were by no means unanimous. As chair of the committee, I believe that this was a robust process, and I'm confident that that will be the case going forward. There will be more opportunities for those with an interest to register to speak at forthcoming meetings, or simply attend as observers, and we welcome that involvement from residents. Before I come to the timescale, I want to just touch on another matter. There is some confusion around the highways evidence base and the traffic modelling, and I think this is absolutely understandable because it's not straightforward, and if councillors who've been involved with planning and the local plan for some time, if they find it difficult to follow at times, then I think it's no surprise that others struggle to get their heads around it too. On page 6 of tonight's report, points 3.3 to 3.5, an explanation is given as to how the preferred spatial option has been modelled. I'll put this sort of as simply as I can. That preferred option modelling includes sites considered by the local plan subcommittee in the second week of December as possible additional sites in order to achieve our housing target, including the 10% buffer. Now, a few of those sites were rejected by the committee at that meeting, and they are listed in the report, the ones that were not accepted. But because of the time needed for officers to undertake the modelling work, which is not a quick exercise, they needed to start that work before decisions were taken at the meeting. So the preferred spatial option presents, if you like, a worst case scenario, and it does include sites which were not, at that stage, accepted. In addition, and for a similar reason, point 3.4 explains that figure 314 on page 41 of the Sustainable Accessibility and Baseline Appraisal Technical Report, sorry about the clunky title, but that shows a map of the east of Braintree, which is larger than the site that was ultimately allocated. And point 3.5 explains clearly that further work on the highways evidence base will be undertaken between Regulation 18 and Regulation 19. And the final preferred spatial option will be updated to reflect the agreed allocations to be included in the draft local plan. Essex Highways is satisfied that the methodology they are using meets national planning policy requirements. The same methodology is being used to support the Chelmsford local plan and the Colchester local plan processes. A point about the delivery of housing numbers. A question raised by more than one speaker this evening on housing numbers. The evidence base works to support the local plan, and it's based on growth that's to be delivered within the 15-year local plan period, which is up to 2041. That's what the planning system requires us to do. So for King's Dean, for example, the housing trajectory anticipates 1,850 homes being delivered within the local plan period, and it's therefore included in the modelling. Bear in mind that all allocated sites, whatever size they are, even once they are allocated and approved by an inspector, will still have to go through the planning process. And with the very large sites, this will involve detailed master planning. So not all 5,000 homes for King's Dean, for example, will appear in the plan period, and that applies to some of the other large sites as well. All existing growth within the current local plan is included in the modelling. The RAG assessment was referred to, and we were asked, well, why isn't risk considered? There is a great deal of technical work to be undertaken on individual sites around their sustainability and the mitigation needed. This work is ongoing and will be available for Regulation 19 consultation. And I apologise, Chairman, if I sound a bit like a broken record with this. I keep saying that more work will follow between Reg 18 and Reg 19, but that is absolutely the case, and I think I just need to keep reminding everyone of that. What you see in the report tonight is not the final version. There is more to come. On the roads and highways, I think I can speak for the majority of us, if not for all of us. We were dismayed by the government's decision not to proceed with the upgrades to the A120 and A12. Yeah. That major transport routes running through the eastern region, because it isn't just our district this affects, it's the whole region, that they've been ignored is, I think, unfathomable, quite frankly. My message to MHCLG is we, as a local authority, are playing our part in helping you achieve your 1.5 million new homes. How about giving us a helping hand? One way we might achieve a rethink is to put pressure on the government by producing a local plan with large sites, such as King's Dean, with 5,000 homes, Halstead, 2,750, alongside the local plans currently being produced by our neighbours in Chelmsford and Colchester, whose sites are similarly affected by the restrictions on the A120 and the A12. Well, you never know, Chairman, we might even get a government U-turn on this. They have been known, some quite recently. So, members, I want to turn to the timetable that officers and the local plan subcommittee are working to, because it is challenging, no two ways about it. A suggestion has been made that when it comes to the lack of progress with the major road routes, that we stand up to the government and say, no, we aren't producing a new local plan until you come up with the road infrastructure. Now, I think it's very tempting to take that course of action, but it carries enormous and, in my view, I would say unacceptable risk. We have to present our revised, updated local plan to the Inspectorate by the end of December this year, 2026. It is essential that we meet this deadline. Failure to do so means it will not be eligible for examination and adoption under the current planning system, with the result that we would be required to start all over again on a new plan. The consequences of that scenario are no adopted local plan, likely no 5-year supply, and open season for speculative planning applications to come forward. Applications that would be very difficult under those circumstances for a planning committee to refuse, and if they are refused, very difficult to defend those refusals at appeals. There is a further point I want to make. If we miss this deadline and have to start again, it is quite possible that a new unitary authority might be reviewing this district's local plan. So the decision on sites might not be as locally determined as is happening now. I know that local knowledge is valued. We've had a good number of speakers at the local plan subcommittee meetings, and their comments did not influence decisions, but they have been very helpful in forming opinions. I know only too well that not all the sites in this draft document are supported. Some, especially the large sites, are strongly objected to, as we've heard this evening. And I get it. I do understand the well thought out arguments against some of those sites. King's Dean in particular, as we heard from tonight's speakers, has prompted real concerns about roads and transport. And that's not the only one. I know that members and residents have similar worries about sites close to Cressing and Hatfield Peveril. We do look for development on brownfield sites, and when the landowners of such sites approach the council with a view to development, we will engage with them. But actually, this district has very few brownfield sites, and those alone would be insufficient to meet our housing target. As a local authority, we also have to be mindful of the government's national planning policy, which requires development to be focused on locations which are or can be made sustainable. In particular, recent changes to the NPPF mentioned that sites close to train stations and major roads should be given serious consideration. It is not an option for any local planning authority to ignore that instruction. It's worth saying that the large sites do bring benefits in terms of infrastructure. They bring schools, health centres, community services, and these facilities come forward at planning stage and with Section 106 funding. Halstead's a good example. The town councillors have, on the whole, accepted the 2,750 new homes around the town on the basis that this will help bring forward the bypass that the town council has been asking for some years. But if, Chairman and members, you don't want housing adjacent to the three towns, Halstead, Braintree and Whittam, if you don't want them next to your key service villages, all judged to be sustainable locations, then where do we allocate the new homes? Because I've said before, and I make absolutely no apology for repeating this, there will be no point in presenting the inspectorate with a draft local plan showing that we have not made our housing target. Not a target that we chose, a government-imposed target, and one that this government has made clear we must achieve. The message, quite soon after they were elected, was if as a local authority you cannot produce an up-to-date local plan together with the housing numbers, you can expect the MHCLG to step in and run your planning department for you. It has happened before in a local authority not a million miles away from here. Do we want a government department to make our decisions for us? I think we'd rather be in charge and making the decisions, wouldn't we? So I hope that tonight, members, we can agree that this draft local plan can go forward to Regulation 18 for consultation and take the first significant step towards securing a sound plan for the benefit and protection of this district. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, Sarah. Thank you, Councillor Spray. I'd now like to invite Sarah Ashton, our Head of Planning, to present the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Chairman. So as Councillor Spray has said, the Council's been working on updating its local plan since 2024. Sorry. In terms of where we are in the process, the Regulation 18 Preferred Options consultation is the first of two statutory consultations which will be carried out this year. And the Regulation 18 consultation is the first to be carried out which proposes new sites to be allocated for housing and employment. The consultation is required to be for a minimum of 6 weeks, and the responses to the Regulation 18 consultation will be reported back to the Local Plan Subcommittee, and further changes will be made where necessary. And then all of those changes will go into a further Regulation 19 draft plan. which will then be consulted upon for 6 weeks and then submitted for examination to the Planning Inspectorate. And that all has to take place by December 2026 to be considered under the existing planning system. The updated local plan extends the plan period from 2033 to 2041 and identifies additional growth to meet that need moving forward. Just to recap, the new housing figure is based on the standard method, which requires the council to provide a minimum of 1,149 homes per year, plus a 10% buffer, which equals 1264. In terms of the draft plan, one of the key changes is the removal of the Section 1 plan, as we no longer share any development proposals with Colchester. The draft plan, once adopted, will replace the existing two-part local plan. In developing this updated plan, the Local Plan Subcommittee has considered all the call for sites submitted, and each chapter in the local plan has also been considered to ensure the contents of each chapter reflects changes in circumstances or national policy. It is, however, likely that further assessment will be needed on these policies once the new NPPF is released. That's currently subject to a consultation that closes in March, or if any regulations, new legislation, guidance happens prior to Regulation 19. So it is an iterative process that takes into account changes and reforms that seem to be happening constantly at the moment. This slide shows you the suite of studies that are being developed to inform the updates to the local plan. So it shows you where they've been commissioned and their status. I would just highlight, as mentioned by Councillor Spray, the highways work is ongoing to support a Regulation 19 consultation. And alongside this, the infrastructure delivery plan work will also be ongoing up to Regulation 19. Should also be noted that the sustainability appraisal, which assesses the environmental impacts of the plan, is also outstanding. But this is expected to be completed shortly, in the next 2 weeks. And this will be agreed by Councillor Spray as chair of the Local Plan Subcommittee and myself in the role of Head of Planning, so that it can form part of the Regulation 18 consultation, as it's a statutory document to be provided within the Regulation 18 consultation. Moving on to some of the detail, the existing spatial strategy is proposed to be largely retained as existed, but emphasises reuse of previously developed land within settlements and highlights the need for sustainable development in locations which are accessible by a variety of transport options. The hierarchy of settlements is not proposed to be changed. And this is illustrated by the spatial strategy diagram, and which shows where growth is proposed along the transport corridors, and also it sets out the hierarchy of settlements. I'm just going to apologise now. There is a small but important error on this slide, which is that next to east of Braintree should be a P and not an E. So with that in mind, there are 6 growth locations that are proposed to be carried forward from the existing local plan into the updated local plan. And then there are 4 new strategic growth locations, and these are being proposed in Halstead, Hatfield Peveril, Kelvedon and east of Braintree. And on screen now is the housing trajectory, which is also included in the plan, which sets out the development that will be delivered in the plan and the development that is planned post the plan period. In total, the plan has 88 policies. Not all of those policies deal with housing. We also have policies on employment provision, retail, as well as policies to protect the environment or recreational facilities, among other things. In terms of the consultation itself, this consultation seeks views from statutory consultees such as Historic England and Natural England, non-statutory consultees such as members of the public and local businesses, and people who have asked to be included on the Council's database. The plan has to be made publicly available on the Council's website, as well as being available within the Council offices. And officers are going to include copies at local libraries, including the library at Sudbury. The consultation will be promoted on the front page of the Council's website with a link to a Regulation 18 consultation page, which will include a number of resources, including a short video to explain the local plan, instructions on how to use Objective, which is our consultation portal, the draft plan, a summary leaflet to summarise the draft plan, And once it's taken place, there'll be a link to the webinar that we are planning to hold. We will also signpost people to the evidence base supporting the local plan and provide details of the in-person exhibitions which are currently being arranged. We will use all our usual communication channels, the newsletter, database and social media to raise awareness of the webinar and encourage residents and businesses to sign up for this, including giving anyone who signs up the opportunity to ask a question in advance of the webinar, which can be answered by officers either during the webinar or in our frequently asked questions sheet, which is also going to be produced. In line with the requirements of our statement of community involvement, site notices will be put up on all proposed new housing sites which are capable of providing 10 or more new homes, and also new employment allocations to raise awareness. Finally, in terms of the exhibitions, these are planned to take place in areas where higher levels of growth are currently proposed, including at Kelvedon, Braintree, Halstead, Hatfield-Peveril, Coggeshall and Cressing. Dates and times for these events will be promoted once the arrangements have been finalised. We will be using our online consultation software called Objective to process comments received. We would encourage anyone to submit responses online, although all responses will be accepted, but comments submitted using the system can be processed more quickly, and taking into account the timescales for progressing the local plan, it would be helpful if people wishing to provide comments are encouraged to use the system in the first instance, if they're able to do so. Official dates of the consultation are yet to be finalised due to the need to ensure the sustainability appraisal has been received and signed off for publication. However, currently we're planning to commence the consultation on or around the 19th of February and plan to close on or around the 8th of April 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sprey and Mrs Ashton, for your presentation. Before we move to the debate, I will now invite Councillor Thorogood as a member with a declared ORI to speak now. Councillor Thorogood, please address full council. The normal rules of debate apply to your speech in that you have up to 5 minutes. Once you have spoken, I will pause to allow you to leave the chamber.
Thank you, Chair. As one of the district councillors for Kelvedon, I want to explain why I have serious concerns about the continued inclusion of Kings Dean 5,000 homes and Monks Farm 600 homes in the draft local plan in light of the cancellation of the A12 and A120 upgrades that originally underpinned their assumed deliverability. For many years, residents were told that growth at this scale would be accompanied by transformational infrastructure along the A12 corridor and wider network, upgrades that would have increased capacity on the A12, provided safer junctions and slip roads, and access changes that would have taken strategic pressure away from Kelvedon and Fearing's local roads. That context has now completely changed. The government has cancelled both the A12 upgrade from Marks Tay to Boreham and the A120 scheme from Braintree to Kelvedon South Junction 23. Those schemes were not peripheral, they were essential to provide the structural spine that would have made the development of this scale potentially workable. A new link road, a bridge over the railway, de-trunked sections of the old A12 for local access, and a new four-way junction arrangement capable of handling both strategic and local traffic were needed. Without them, Kings Dean is no longer supported by strategic infrastructure. Instead, it becomes dependent on a package of mitigation. What's needed from the developer is a 2-mile single carriageway link road from the B1024 Coggeshall Road to A12 Kelvedon South, a new road bridge over the mainline railway, and the full remodelling of the Kelvedon South A12 Junction 23, which is currently only 2-way, on towards Chelmsford and off from Colchester. Without a new 4-way junction, traffic from the 5,600 houses travelling to Colchester would have to go through Kelvedon High Street and Fearing Hill. The question you must ask is whether that replacement package is realistically fundable and deliverable through around 5,600 homes when tested against national planning policy. Using comparable UK schemes, a cautious estimate for the link road, bridge over the railway and a new 4-way junction on the A12 would cost a minimum of £90 million, and that's without contingency. When divided across 5,600 dwellings, that implies a transport burden of roughly £15,000 per home, and that's before allowing for on-site roads, local junction improvements, bus provision, walking and cycling infrastructure and wider network mitigation. Under the NPPF, viability testing must show that policy-compliant development can deliver affordable housing, education, healthcare, green infrastructure, utilities and transport together. If a highway scheme of this magnitude is prioritised, something else has to give. Either affordable housing is reduced or infrastructure, such as a new secondary school, is lost. Both outcomes conflict national policy. There are also serious deliverability concerns. The rail bridge and junction works would be needed early, but developer contributions accrue slowly over many years. There is no published business case, no confirmed National Highways or Department for Transport funding, no signed delivery agreement, and key land for the four-way junction is owned by a third party, out of the developer's control. The NPPF is explicit that plans should not rely on speculative assumptions. On a spreadsheet, 5,600 homes may appear to make the numbers add up, but in the real world of land control, cash flow and competing policy requirements, it is far harder to see how this package can be delivered. What concerns me is that the local draft plan continues to present King's Dean as a cornerstone of the preferred option, as if the original strategic highways still existed, or the improvements still existed, and as if this very substantial replacement infrastructure is straightforward and certain. It is neither. This is not about resisting growth. Kelvedon understands growth. 670 new homes are currently being built or have permission in Kelvedon, and Fearing has another 850 houses in the pipeline too. Scale matters, location matters, and above all, evidence matters. When a proposal of King's Dean size is carried forward after the cancellation of the very infrastructure that justified it, this council has to ask whether it is planning realistically or simply hoping solutions will emerge later. That is not fair on residents, as you heard, and it is not sound plan making. I recognise tonight's decision is about consultation, not approval, but consultation should be based on credible, evidence-backed options, not on infrastructure assumptions that no longer align with government funding reality. Planning is not just about housing numbers, it is about what is actually deliverable. And I'm afraid from what I've heard this evening, my view, based on the current evidence that has been presented, King's Dean is not deliverable.
Thank you, Councillor Thorogood, for your speech. You're now more than welcome to leave the chamber. Thank you. So thank you, members. We will now move on to the debate. Do any members wish to speak on this item? Thank you, members. Councillor Beavis.
Thank you, Mr Chairman, and I wanted to begin by thanking the officers and the members of the local plan subcommittee for all of your hard work. And I also just wanted to thank the members of my own group, actually, who have absolutely amazed me with just the background reading and attending and engaging in the meetings as well. Officers are recommending that the updated local plan increasing our annual housing numbers from 716 to 1,264 be published. When this was originally put to us by Councillor Gabrielle Spray, we were told it was going to be a light touch refresh, and it doesn't feel much like that to me. Lack of community infrastructure, lack of highways infrastructure, and lack of evidence.
improvements to the A12 and the A120 have been cancelled. I'd like to know what is the timeline for the stage 1 house to bypass. This application was granted on the basis that the bypass would come forward, and I'd like to know when there's going to be more information for this major infrastructure. The words build, baby build spring to mind. I feel that Kingsdean is a garden community and Newtown slipped into the planning process where the local plan committee rejected parish council supported developments across our district. I appreciate that there is a balancing act, but I feel that the spatial strategy is wrong and that the current draft will upset and confuse our communities. It will increase congestion, our residents' #1 priority in the local recent consultation. Tonight I will abstain from voting, and I'd like to reconsider my thoughts at a later date once our residents have spoken and made their responses. In tonight's presentation from our officer Sarah, it also tells us that there's going to be exhibitions planned around our district in Howstead, Braintree and Whittam. At a recent budget meeting, we were told that actually the Christmas lights planned for Braintree, Howstead and Whittam should be of a real interest for those that live in the rural communities because we need to be supporting those towns. Yet in tonight's consultation, nothing is planned for the north of the Braintree district. And I hope that this can be reconsidered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Beavis. Councillor Dervish.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whilst I appreciate we have a housing criteria to meet set by central government, I must raise concerns for the sites within Hatfield Peveril which are included and recommended within this local plan for development. Hatfield Peveril has seen a vast amount of development already and the current infrastructure simply cannot cope with existing residents, let alone further housing being built. I will support this evening's recommendation to submit the draft plan for public consultation and urge all residents to take the opportunity to comment accordingly. Can the portfolio holder assure me and residents of Hatfield Peveril that proper infrastructure such as the A12, and I do appreciate your comments earlier regarding the A12, education and medical facilities will be enhanced before development can take place? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dervish. Councillor Abram.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening to all you good people. I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of the Coggeshall ward. They are concerned about the limited evidence on Kingsdean on top of the hundreds of homes already designated. They are concerned about the lack of infrastructure. They want to know, will the infrastructure come first? The area is congested and the roads are dangerous enough already. My residents tell me that they do not want Kingsdean.
Thank you, Councillor Abram. Councillor Finken.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I also would like to thank Councillor Spray for her leadership of the local planning subcommittee over many meetings and the thoroughness with which she prepares for those meetings, and also the officers for producing such a comprehensive and clear report. I think they've done an excellent job. I'd just like to ask a question about the map for Howstead, which is on page 276, inset number 34. Howstead councillors, as you've said, have generally welcomed the proposals for Howstead with the view of hopefully getting a bypass. But the map actually shows the route of the map going through the middle of the requested developments, which I think is a bit misleading, really. We did have maps at the local plan subcommittee which showed clearly that the bypass would go the other side of the developments. We have a meeting on Wednesday of the town council with local residents, and we don't want them to be misled, really, or to ask questions which perhaps don't need to be asked about that. I would like it clarified, possibly a slightly more clearer map provided, or alternatively, if that's not possible, clarifying notes to explain the situation with the developments and the bypass. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Finken. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must admit that I've heard some really compelling speeches this evening. I congratulate those who presented them. But one of the things that I think I'd better point out is that we are speaking a lot of the time about housing development, and as somebody has rightly said, people will characterise it as concreting over good farmland that should, in their mind, should be producing food. That's true, but there are other ways in which we cover our farmland and take them out of food production. And I represent a rural ward, very sparsely populated. So I want to try and make the case for better understanding and better representation and better policies to help the rural areas, which are in actual fact, in spatial sense, the biggest percentage of this district. And with respect to that, we need to attend to some very big and some very small policy issues. And I just want to give you some instances. Big might be 3,500 acres. That's big. 3,500 acres is the amount of land that would be taken up by solar panels in this district under existing connection agreements to substations in this district. They will happen. Battery farms. Battery farms are dangerous things in the sense that they contain a high risk but a low probability of it being realised. The high risk is fire and thermal runaway. If it happens, you end up with high levels of toxic contamination being emitted into the air and into the groundwater. We don't want them in the wrong place. And I can promise everybody in this room that there is no real evidence that I've ever been a NIMBY about any of these things. I want good quality planning and delivery that doesn't run contrary to the interests of all of us that are here. So, in the recent quarterly performance report for this council, we heard that the supplementary planning document production to cover renewable energy planning has been all but kicked into the long grass. If that's the case, then I would argue that we need policies to get the right developments in the right place with the right mitigations with respect to renewable energy. And that is in no way to try and head it off or say, no, we don't want it, or we reject the idea of having it. It's all about getting it right, and this local plan has to be about getting it right. Now, there are small issues, like in this district, right at the top, Bewers, tiny little place, right on the border. They had a large predatory housing development proposed for the countryside, and yet we had the policies that, despite a terrible tussle with the developers right through as far as appeal to get it refused, it was the policies in our local plan that helped make that happen. So we know that the local plan can work for the countryside areas. And yet what worries me is that under the current proposed policies, there is nothing strong, in my view, to prevent inappropriate development of land which is inside the proposed extension to the Devon Vale National Landscape, used to be called an AONB. So I personally believe that that should be in there. And in the past, it's been stronger and it's worked. So it ain't bust, so why would we fix or change it, is my view. Let me move on to Hamlet policy. I agree, somebody from the public said, what about the north? I agree, the north, the very rural part, this is a district of huge contrast, the very north should be taking some development. So I'm puzzled as to why another policy which doesn't seem to be bust is being changed. The Hamlet policy basically allows single infill dwellings in small hamlets. Currently, that's set at 10 or more houses, and it works. I'm a beneficiary of it, which is why I know it works, because you can get a small level of development, but across a vast range of communities. We've got lots of small ones. So I would say that we need to make sure that we keep it at the level it is at the moment, so that the North is, in its own way, helping share and take the burden. But in all of this, I think it's really important, and this is finishing, Mr. Chairman. In all of this, I think it's really important that we plan for all of the things that can impact this place, this lovely district, contrasty, rural and urban, and all the rest of it. But we need to plan for all of that, and that means making sure we've got the right policies to deal not only with housing, but with countryside area, and with the new, very, very large-scale developments that can come from the renewable energy industry. And with that, I will sit. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. And next up, I have Councillor Abbott.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I hope my voice doesn't give out. Like many have had the flu the last month. The first thing is, I spoke to officers before the meeting. There are a few things which I don't think were picked up from local plan committee about page layout, page numbers. There's a couple of maps where the colouring. I've suggested to Sarah Ashton I could maybe email that and the changes could be made. They don't change any meaning, but I just thought I'd mention that. Mention was made by officers of the consultation events, and again I'd like to say the same as I did at the local plan committee meeting. I think we should have one at Witham. Actually, it's not listed at the minute. It is one of our main towns, and I think we should have one. Like others, I'd like to acknowledge the long hours put in by officers and councillors, together with the valuable representations of residents' groups and parish councils. And I'd like to specifically thank the chairman of local plan committee, who said it was for the local plan committee to decide on sites, and so it has been. But I think that should also apply to the next steps, because it's inevitable. We're going to get a very large number of representations, and we should duly consider those. But I think we have come unstuck on the big sites, on the strategic sites, and this is what I want to talk about. I believe the distribution of the proposed sites, compared to the spatial strategy and available evidence, is unsustainable. There is simply far too much new development proposed in the far south of the district. And that is particularly the case, as Councillor Thorogood and others have said, now that the A12 project has been cancelled. King's Dean proposes not just 5,600 houses, but 33 hectares of employment. And although we were told it might be an apple in the eye of a gleam in the eye of the developers, talk of a strategic rail hub, that appeared at the last local plan committee meeting, which I'd never heard of before. Just a few miles away, we've got 2,500 plus houses allocated at east of Braintree. We've got large sites at Hatfield, Peveril, and these are in addition to the many sites recently built under construction or with planning permission at Fearing, Kelvin and Witham, Rivenald, Silver End and Cressing, and many would say, and I do, without the necessary services to support them. We've also got pylons coming, we've got the waste site, we've got the quarries. There is simply too much development being pushed into the south of the district. Road traffic congestion has noticeably worsened in recent years on roads such as the main road through Witham, Tye Green, Kelvedon Village Centre, Silver End Western Road, the railway bridge at Rivenhall End, of which there are also substandard junctions on the A12 with frequent crashes. And that's before we talk about Galleys Corner, which of course we could spend the whole night talking about. Add into that mix that we do not have the highways evidence base that in any way supports further major growth. And indeed, as members of the public may know, many questions were asked about that highways evidence and the modelling at local plan committee. I don't think we have a sustainable plan. The point about railway stations was very well made. Railway stations, whilst the government may say, yes, it's a strategic thing you need to talk about, they only actually will give you about 5% of your travel to work numbers and about 10% overall. 90 to 95% of people do not use the railways. I wish more did, but they don't. A more sustainable plan would be to have more housing in the north. I'm not talking about here about overwhelming villages, but some housing for each village. And controversial as it may be, I'm going to say it, and I said it at the local plan committee, a more strategic balance between west of Braintree and Kelvedon. West of Braintree should have some instead of none. Kelvedon should have less. We still get the numbers. It's not about saying we don't get the numbers. When the leader of the council said at local plan committee, if not here, then where, talking about King's Dean, well, we had lots of wheres, and we spent most of the summer rejecting them, and ended up putting it all down in the south of the district, which was wrong. Some argued in those meetings about large-scale loss of countryside at west of Braintree, but then they voted for King's Dean. It's the same argument, large-scale loss of countryside. So, in concluding, Mr Chairman, whilst agreeing we need to get the local plan out to consultation, and as the Chairman of the Local Plan Committee rightly said, we've got the government potentially changing the plan system. If we don't get that in before then, we go into a new system. We've got its never-ending pressure to change the National Planning Policy Framework and the numbers. I simply cannot support this plan as it is, and I would urge this Council listens very carefully to what will be a large number of representations before we get to Reg 19. And the very final point I'd like to make, and it does pick up on what Councillor Spray said, beware saying, let's Colchester City Council and Braintree Council load thousands of houses along the A12 because that might pressurise the government to build the A12. What if they don't? Yeah. That's a terrible risk to take for local communities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Next I have Councillor Toby Williams.
Mr Chairman, thank you very, very much. Having to decide where homes need to be built without anywhere near the right infrastructure is like being asked to complete a jigsaw puzzle with half the puzzle pieces missing. And the big pieces of the puzzle that we're missing, as has been discussed throughout this debate, is the A12 upgrade and the A120 upgrade. We desperately, desperately need them. As Councillor Abbott rightly just alluded to, the south of the district is disproportionately impacted by this revision to the local plan. Not so much my area of Whittam is relatively unscathed, but the King's Dean development, of course, you know, we would be silly not to think that the King's Dean development won't affect the entire A12 corridor that runs right through our district and indeed into other districts as well. And there can be no doubt that the A12 simply isn't fit for purpose. You only have to try and drive, for example, from Kelvedon to Whittam at rush hour, and it is incredibly slow. You spend twice as much time on the A12 as you would do at other times of the day. It is just not fit for purpose. And I do think that when we're talking about putting an extra 6,000 homes right on the A12, one thing that we often don't talk about actually is the economic consequences. Because if we load more and more cars onto the A12, it undermines our connectivity and it makes our district a less attractive place to do business. And I think as well some of the smaller roads are forgotten about when we talk about this level of development. Yes, the south of the district is more urban than other parts of the district, but it isn't entirely urban. There are plenty of rural areas, lots of small roads, lots of small country lanes, and a lot of those are very, very much under pressure already. So I do think that the local plan subcommittee, or at least members of it, have been absolutely right to say that we need to make clear that these developments are not sustainable, they are non-starters unless we have that infrastructure that we have been promised time and time again. And as Councillor Spray alluded to, the government really needs to pull its weight here, and it needs to stick to its side of the bargain and give us that infrastructure that we so badly need. Saying all of that, I will be supporting this tonight because I think the alternative is just so much worse. Because let's be clear, if we don't have a local plan, then we are essentially relinquishing any power that we have, and we are handing power over to the government over to developers, over to the planning inspector. We're opening the door to speculative planning applications. I have my reservations about this, but the alternative is a lot worse, I'm afraid to say. So I will be backing this, albeit reluctantly, and I would urge others to do so, even if it is with a heavy heart.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Next I have Councillor Staines.
Thank you, Chair. The draft plan focuses huge development in Kelvedon, and residents have highlighted the multiple challenges with this approach. So I'm going to pick up on some different areas, if that's okay. Nothing in this draft plan safeguards west of Braintree 3.0, other than it currently doesn't appear in this draft local plan. This positive omission, hard fought by residents and parish councils over many years, could change if the draft plan or modified draft plan was deemed unsound by the inspector and required other areas to be visited very quickly again. Regarding LPR 38, which is the Wethersfield Supplemental Plan, could Section E be added to attract some BNG investment, as this is a key part of the emerging neighbourhood plan? And should anything be added to LPR 77, including another map, to support securing a nationally recognised landscape designation for the area too, like Dedham Vale, but for North Essex? Pages 185 to 197 show lots of 106 provisions, but no new community infrastructure levy opportunities, and I wonder, is that an oversight? Irrespective of sites and policies, and unlike Colchester, no UK government money has been secured to enable infrastructure to support the preferred BDC development along the A12 or A120 or bottleneck Galleys Corner. BDC's plan relies entirely on multiple unconnected voluntary developer contributions to deliver all the infrastructure required, including roundabouts, rail crossings, sewerage and power upgrades and major A-road junction improvements. So I was really surprised to see LPR 23J talk about the improvements to Galleys Corner, including a future A120 dual route. But this route, Route D, was rejected by National Highways. So if Route D went ahead, it would deliver more traffic to a flatter, bigger roundabout with more traffic lights and longer tailbacks at Galleys Corner, the third heart of our district. If it didn't go ahead, scarce resources from S106 could actually be misdirected to a dead plan. I think a key question here is about the local plan and how residents will be involved in the stewardship model, deciding how it works, who should be involved, and also some transparency regarding S106 contribution decisions, especially for the large developments which are going to be near them and may last for many years, including beyond the planned period of 2041. We know that if a local economic picture deteriorates, developers foot drag delivery of houses and infrastructure and renegotiate essential 106 commitments. This local plan does not address those known risks adequately and exposes the district's residents, businesses choosing Braintree as a base and even through traffic to years of disruption when we should be delivering improvements for our residents first, shouldn't we? And I expect this sentiment will figure strongly in representations that we hope to get through the consultation period and could add pressure to the UK government and MHCLG about Braintree's last local plan. As this plan doesn't adequately support today's local residents, I cannot support it tonight and will abstain. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Staines. And next I have Councillor Garrett.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here to talk about my ward, which is the Bumpstead ward. So there is a site in Steeple Bumpstead that has been allocated into the draft plan, which is 2285. So the north of the district has had some allocation. But site 2293 at Sturmer, an absolutely massive site, 69 hectares on the Essex side, 87 hectares on the West Suffolk side, has been discounted from the draft local plan, and with good reason. There is no connectivity at that point at all. The last bus at Steeple Bumpstead, having gone through the consultation, Essex has decided to cancel and caused enormous upset. The nearest rail stations, which is in the NPPF saying that developments should be close to railway stations. So the nearest ones would be around 18 miles or 20 miles for that part of the district. So the connectivity is absolutely abominable. The A1307, which is the road to Cambridge, Homes England has said it's at capacity, and whilst I've heard a lot of talk about the A12, there is absolutely nothing planned for that part of the district at all. It's a network of small single-track lanes around the villages. In terms of Site 2293, it sits on an enormous plateau way above the Kalina distribution site and also above the chemical and biological industries. It's not a great place to bring up families. It sits on lovely Grade 2 agricultural land, which is very productive, and it also has a Grade 1 listed church, an ancient monument of a Saxon burial mound. So I can see why this site was completely excluded. I will look at the sites in the Bumpstead ward because I believe there are one or two smaller ones which I will write about that I think could have gone into the local plan. So taking on board what everyone has said this evening, I think there are some smaller sites, and I shall be putting that into my when I write in for the Regulation 18. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Next, I have Councillor Finch.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to acknowledge the hard work that has gone into the local plan so far. However, I would like to raise serious concerns about the preferred spatial option for King's Dean, specifically in relation to transport, highways infrastructure and the wider impacts on Kelvedon and Fearing. At this point in time, as we have heard, there is no detailed site-specific highways report presented alongside this preferred spatial option, as it's still in preparation. There is no published highways impact assessment that clearly demonstrates how traffic generated by more than 5,000 new dwellings would be accommodating on the existing road network. Where is a fully costed, phased and deliverable infrastructure package? We are being asked to support a strategic allocation without clarity on how key congestion points will be mitigated, who will fund the highway road works, or those works realistically delivered. The evidence provided so far is not sufficient for a development of this scale. What is in front of us places the council in a difficult and risky position. We are consulting on a large site as part of our local plan without the transport evidence needed to properly test whether it's realistic, viable or even achievable. I appreciate what has been mentioned this evening on how highways may work, but meaningful consultation depends on the public and decision makers having access to reliable evidence at the point choices are being made, not after the choices have already been locked in. Kelvedon and Fearing are conservation area villages that already experience significant traffic pressure. Any proposal of this magnitude must therefore be supported by a comprehensive and credible highways assessment that demonstrates how additional traffic will be managed without harming the character, safety and function of these settlements. At present, that evidence does not exist. The consequences of increased traffic are not abstract. More vehicles means more congestion along the high street, higher levels of pollution and a clear public health implications for residents. Increased traffic also brings vibration. Residents have already made me aware, surveyors have confirmed their historical homes in these villages are suffering damage linked to existing traffic levels. Additional traffic risks, worsening that damage, putting homes, businesses and public safety at further risk. While conservation and heritage are referenced throughout the agenda papers, those considerations appear to stop at the boundary of the development site. There is insufficient recognition of the wider indirect impacts on surrounding villages whose historic environments and conservation assets would bear the brunt of increased traffic generated by King's Dean. In summary, I feel there's a fundamental lack of foresight in how highways and transport infrastructure has been addressed for this proposal. The impacts on the wider road network, on heritage assets and on public health cannot be ignored or deferred simply to meet the objective of delivering a local plan. We need a clear, detailed and evidence-based report before we should consider proceeding further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Finch. Councillor Ramage.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. To a certain extent, Sarah has taken a lot away of what I was going to ask about the consultation. I was going to ask what date it's going to start and when it's going to finish, but you've emphasised that you haven't finalised that side of things, which is fair enough. But could I emphasise that obviously everyone in the community needs to see this. Most people will be able to go online or on the website, that sort of thing. But there are elderly people in our district who don't have that access, and I would like to know how that's going to be dealt with, because they are as important as everyone else in the district. So, what else was I going to say? Yeah, it's just important that also that fellow councillors tell their community about the actual consultation, as well as your neighbours, you know, because it's important that everyone knows about this, and there's only a short period of time that this can be dealt with. So, and it's our future as a district. That's it, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ramage. Councillor Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nearly all my points have been crossed off. But what I would like to say is I'd like to thank Councillor Spray for clarifying the points tonight. I think that was very important, that we do know that this is not the end of the beginning or the beginning of the end, but this is a consultation period. But for myself, bits that I would like is brownfield sites. We keep being told that these have been explored and they have been looked at, but can we, especially in our own district, list where the sites were, why they've been accepted or rejected, so that we can all be assured that we have fully looked into them. The bridge over the railway line at Kelvedon, I mean, because it's just got to be, you cannot build a development of that side and run it across a level crossing. So can we get to highways and tell them that we must know what they really are looking to do? Otherwise, the consultation is pointless. And also, something that I was looking at the other week is that there is apparently planning permission granted for 1.75 million housing dwellings in this country that are just not being used by developers anyway. So are we, as a planning authority and as a country, ensuring that developers are meeting their obligations and we're not just bowing over to them so that they can make the most profit that they can? Because that's what it does seem if you're looking on the outside. There's no way apart from that. That is the way it looks. As I say, thank you for the clarification, and because of the clarification, I'm more than happy to support that we proceed with the next stage forward. But let's remember, we've got it now. We've got a way forward, and let's go forward. And very finally, I would like to say that since all the time that I've been around, the only major upgrade that's ever been done on the A12 in our district was done under Tony Blair's government. There's been plenty of time for government since then to do something about the infrastructure along that road, and it's all been ignored. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heath. Councillor Bowers-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Wrong council. I wasn't going to speak, but I feel I have to now, because everybody knows this really gets my goat about what Councillor Heath has just referred to, and that is the amount of planning permissions for properties within this district that are not being developed. And the only person that can do anything about that is the government. Any government has chosen, and notice I say any government has chosen to ignore that. And until the day comes when we start charging developers per plot, per building, that they're not developing within 6 months of the planning permission, this will continue. This will continue forever unless there is a financial restraint put on developers. Because right at this moment in time, we've got 3,637 planning permissions in this authority that have not been built out. But we're still being asked by this government to provide more and more and more houses. And what they've done is they've put all the housing requests and numbers down this end of the country and sent all the money up to north, and that's why all of the infrastructure and the roadworks have been abandoned down this end. That's my opinion, and that's what I think and can see what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next I have Councillor Diamond.
Thank you. Most of my points have been made already, so I will be brief. I certainly agree with Councillor Bauer-Flint's point that we need to have more focus on those that have been given permission to build, or that will take primary legislation, and that would not happen overnight, certainly not the length of time that the government has already been in power for. Teachers, doctors and shop workers are all examples of professions that a society needs to function. They're also examples of professionals who often struggle to afford to live in Braintree District. While I completely appreciate the council has a good reputation for building affordable housing, better than many of our local neighbouring authorities, there is still an acute housing crisis here. For our district to survive and to thrive, we need a housing system that will support people without generational wealth to live here. Therefore, we must approve a local plan that will deliver housing for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Diamond. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a brief point, really, about the references to the north of the district and why can't the north take more. I mean, you only have to really look at the map of this district and realise that those villages in the north, they are largely very small villages. There is no public transport at all, apart from on the road between Great Yeoildham and Sybil Hedingham. And in planning terms, they are simply unsustainable locations. So I'm afraid, as much as people would like to have more housing spread out around this district, it will not pass the planning inspector because they would be regarded as unsustainable locations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Hooks.
Thank you, Chair, members. Having recently taken a seat on the local sub-planning committee over the last few months, I can clearly say that I have not taken any of the decisions during the process lightly. We have been dealt a significant housing number by the government, and that we are required to plan for going forward, and this is disappointing and concerning. What I have done is consistently question the figures we are allocating, testing the housing trajectory, buffers and windfall assumptions to ensure that we are not over-allocating, overburdening our district or locking up land that we will never get back. It is never easy to allocate land for development, and there will always be communities in distress when they are identified for growth. And I do have real sympathy for those communities that are significantly affected by the proposals within this draft plan. However, we also have a responsibility to consider sustainability and infrastructure. We must look at where our main transport corridors are, our rail links and our trunk roads, and King's Dean does benefit from those proximities in a way that the other options simply do not. These proximities are very much aligned with the direction of emerging government policy, which vindicates the decision. I do appreciate that King's Dean is not without its challenges, particularly in the context of the government's decision not to provide A12 widening. However, despite those constraints, it remains a more sustainable and deliverable option within the choices available to us. I also want to place on record my sincere thanks to Rain and Sailing parish councils, their residents and neighbourhood planners. Over many years, when West of Braintree has repeatedly been on the table, they have engaged positively and constructively. They have spoken eloquently with evidence, persistence and tenacity, both during local plan meetings and previously at government inspection. Their engagement has been exemplary and it has mattered. West of Braintree is one hot potato that this council does not need to pick up again, and I fully support its non-inclusion in the draft local plan. There are, however, some positives within this draft plan that are important to acknowledge. Halstead does have a significant allocation, and I hope and expect this will finally help unlock the bypass that the town so desperately needs. Having grown up in Halstead, I am all too aware that the talk of a bypass has gone on for over 40 years. The draft local plan supports its inclusion, but we must now ensure and continue to push that this long-awaited strategic road is delivered and delivered in real time alongside development. I am also pleased that the committee took the clear decision to protect the Flitch Way from harmful development. That protection recognises its importance not just as a route, but as a valued green corridor, heritage asset and community resource that deserves safeguarding for future generations. So it will become to no surprise that I will be voting this evening to support the draft local plan to proceed to going to Regulation 18. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooks. And next I'll hear from Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the committee and the officers for the hard work and many hours they've put into this plan, most of which I can support. But I am struggling to support all this updated local plan due to the incomplete and inaccurate traffic report. I cannot see how we as a council can put a further 6,000 houses along the A12 when the improvements to the A12 have been cancelled. Putting this development at Calverton, along with the 2,000 plus at Mark Stay, the 1,000 plus at Witham, the 1,000 plus at Hatfield Peveril, and not to mention the 8,000 at Boreham. This will not only turn the A12 into a car park, but it will be a gridlock car park. This can also be said about the A120. Therefore, I cannot support the 5,000 houses at King's Dean.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. And next I have Councillor Tom Cunningham.
Thank you, Chairman. A very thorough and comprehensive and well-meaning debate, and I thank everyone who's participated so far, as well as thanking all those who've been actively involved in the local plan process, not just the officers, but on this occasion in particular, Councillor Spray. And I think it's important from the outset to address a couple of issues. I do not think for one moment that this local plan, refresh, renewal, update has ever been suggested that this is light touch. Hours of meetings, thousands of pages of agendas, many assiduous hours of work debating this cannot be described as light touch. I'm also very concerned about the point made, suggested that somehow that Section 106 agreements must be transparent. Of course they're transparent. They're an essential part of the planning process and indeed detailed at the planning application stage. So I think these are issues that perhaps in another time, another place, may need to be addressed offline. I am totally sympathetic with the concerns expressed by residents over King's Dean. And I think it's very important we once again reaffirm the point to government. And we have been very critical of the Labour government for cancelling the A12, and rightly so. But government, if you are serious about unlocking the housing numbers, you have to make the unswerving commitment to not only forward plan the infrastructure, but deal with the short-term mitigations. And I'm not just going to criticise the Labour government, because governments over decades have successfully messed this up in this country. Our strategic planning processes are simply not fit for purpose. And Mr. Chairman, it's not just about levering in the houses, the infrastructure with the houses. There's no consideration of the long-term impact and stewardship of those assets, of those highways assets going forward, not just to include the new traffic, but also to mitigate the existing levels of traffic. So that is the clear line in the sand that we make by proceeding this evening. If you want the houses, you're going to need to come up with the infrastructure. I was very interested, and it was a very comprehensive report given by Councillor Thorogood as a local member and by Councillor Finch in terms of what is likely to be required, and quite legitimately asking the question why it isn't in place here now. I think it's very important that, that those who engage in the process continue to echo those statements vociferously. I don't think for one moment that the mitigations and the infrastructure package required for a housing development the scale of King's Dean, once it's built out fully, can be dealt with through housing contributions. It'll be up to government to lever in that additional funding for the A12. In the same way, it'll be up to the government to mitigate the impact on Hatfield Peveril. And mitigations for the A12 are not just centred around the Boreham interchange. They must be mitigations and future planning for the whole of the A12 going right from Brentwood to the Suffolk border. Mr. Chairman, this is a step forward tonight. It is not the final step. We must proceed this evening, but be prepared that once the public have spoken, once we have full clarity, difficult decisions that have been made to get us to this point may have to be reviewed, and when that time comes, we must all collectively deal with that and not shirk those difficult decisions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. I believe Councillor Edwards is our last speaker this evening. However, as you can appreciate, we've had plenty of you to hear from, so please indicate if I have unfortunately missed you, and I'll come to you after Councillor Edwards. Councillor Edwards, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd first like to make some remarks about how this affects my residents in Bocking South before moving on to the wider local plan and a bit on government policy as well. I spoke in a number of local plan hearings and was greatly heartened at those hearings at the level of local knowledge that was deployed in approving and rejecting the sites that I was there for. A lot has been spoken tonight about brownfield sites. Well, just outside of Bocking South, we have the B&M site in Braintree. I'm really pleased that that is going to be regenerated as part of this local plan. What we do need to make sure is that when that comes forward for planning, that it's sympathetic to the conservation area. Just on the other side of the road, there's some beautiful old houses there. We need to make sure that development is in keeping with its surroundings. The only issue is with this brownfield site, Mr. Chairman, it's only 35 new homes, and that is a problem when we're speaking about brownfield sites. They're important, we must do them, but unfortunately they don't deliver the scale that we need to solve the acute housing crisis we have in this district. I'd like to speak as well about the land at High Garrett, just to the east of High Garrett, Bock End 2033. Number of houses planned there. One thing I'd like to highlight is that there is not a safe crossing point in the entirety of High Garrett, other than right at the very top. That's come up to me as I've spoken to residents along that road. Lots of houses alongside there, children walking to and from school. It would be fantastic if, as part of an S106 agreement, we could have a crossing on that road. The big one in Braintree is the land east of Braintree. This is 1,350 new homes in the 15-year plan period, as we've heard. That's a lot of new homes, and anyone that lives in Braintree, or really anyone that happens to pass through Braintree, will know that Braintree's #1 car park is Galley's Corner. At any time of the day or night, there's always a queue there. We need that A120 upgrade. We really, really do. Not just for King's Dean, but also for the land east of Braintree. In this district, Mr. Chairman, the average house price is £329,000. That is unaffordable for many families. The average monthly rent is £1,200. Again, unaffordable for many families. We have an acute housing crisis here in this district and in the nation more widely. And whilst I don't generally support the national government, I do support their aim of building 1.5 million homes in this Parliament. I don't think we're going to do it, but I'm supportive of the ambition nonetheless. That is why, Mr. Chairman, I'm so confused that the government decided to axe the A12 expansion. That could have unlocked a whole load of new housing, made developments like King's Dean, I think, far more palatable if we'd had that infrastructure. And it's been said many times this evening, we're seeing more housing, the government wants more housing, but we're not seeing that infrastructure to go alongside it. I'd like to agree with Councillor Heath and Councillor Bowes-Flint as well. It is immensely frustrating how many planning permissions we've granted in this district, how good we are at green lighting good developments in this district that then don't get built out. The Bocking Link Road, Councillor Bowes-Flint and I, that is our pet project. Still not done, but hopefully we'll get it done soon. Finally, congratulations, by the way, Josh, on buying your first home. You're 29, you're 2 years older than me. You're much further ahead in life than I am. And thank you very much for your service in the Metropolitan Police as well. I'm nowhere near saving up, being close to being able to buy a home.
Yeah, I wouldn't have it without my grandparents giving me 50,000.
Exactly. And I hope,
so it's still unaffordable.
long live my grandparents, but I hope they do the same thing for me as well.
We're all waiting on, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. But I really think we need to build more homes. We do. And I would like to buy a house in this district at some point. I can't remember which member of the public said it, but I would love to live near my parents too. Currently, that's completely unaffordable for me. So, although I appreciate there are some really tough choices, really difficult choices, again, I think it was mentioned earlier that we're shirking difficult choices. I don't think that's true. This plan is full of difficult choices, but if it means that more homes get built, if it means that houses are more affordable for young people like me, I will support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. So, thank you everybody for your contributions this evening. I have to say there was a significant amount of speakers on this debate. Also, thank you again to the speakers in public question time. So, Councillor Schweer, as seconder and having reserved your right to speak, this is now your opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank everybody for their contributions tonight, including all of the public and the members in this room, because if there's one thing that people really care about, it is where they live and what's going to happen to them in the future. And I think this chamber tonight has heard some very reasoned and logical arguments and comments on the local plan. But the point of this is that it is a local plan, and this is the whole point of going to Reg 18, to open it up to consultation, so absolutely everybody, whoever they are, across the district, has the opportunity to make comments, because this local plan effectively is not just about housing. We have heard tonight from some of our councillors in the chamber here that it's about energy, it's about the water supplies, it is about employment. But importantly, it's also about delivering what absolutely everybody wants, which is a home, but a home that is also able to have education close to them, to have medical facilities close to them, to have schools and everything else. So we want the open spaces. It's becoming more and more important that we get that mixture of infrastructure that everybody wants right. And that is one of the most difficult things in the local plan that is going forward. And because this plan is a refresh, and it is several years away, as we've heard, going up to 41. So with it, a lot can change. And we've had an example of that just recently about the government changing their opinion on the major infrastructure of the A120 and the A12. But that's not to say it may not change again in the future, because governments will change, people will change, and then no doubt national planning policy may well be adjusted over that time frame as well. So I want to move on to just say thank you to all of the officers, because I think actually I am not a member of the local plan committee. I am a reserve, a substitute. And I have to say that when I come along and see the amount, and when I'm asked to appear as a substitute, and you read the enormous agendas, which are sometimes 350, 400 pages long, they show the amount of detail and hard work that has gone into it, and everything else that's gone into the potential of these sites. And I'd also like to mention about the fact that these sites are preferred options. They are not set in stone. And this is the whole point of opening this up to a consultation. So everybody, please, all of the points that people have raised tonight, make those comments in the consultations, because they will be picked up by the officers. And of course, this will then come back into the local plan process and be reviewed and looked at and taken into consideration. This is not Brainttree District Council's local plan per se. This is everybody's local plan. This is everybody's future going forward. And we need to get it as right as best as we can. And with all of that, we hope to have and go forward with a local plan that is really fit for the future, and that being with all of the infrastructure that we so want. And as has been made, we have difficult decisions to make, but those decisions are based around the national planning policies, the information and expertise of our officers who give us all of that guidance. And it is important that we consider all of that, and with all of the local knowledge on the ground as well. So I just would like to urge everybody to make those comments on this consultation so that we can look at that and take this plan forward. We've heard lots of comments about vehicles, sustainability and everything else. And of course, one of the good things going forward is about the sustainability. It's also nature as well, about the sustainability of the buildings and everything else. And that has been outlined with the local nature recovery strategy that's been developed by Essex County Council, also along with the increase in biodiversity net gain. So there's an awful lot going on. But I just want to reiterate, before I sit down, Mr Chairman, about the importance of everybody during this consultation. And Braintreath District Council, with our comms department, we are very good at communicating that, and I'm sure this message will get out because we're having in-person meetings at the various towns and large villages throughout. There'll be a tremendous amount of information getting out there, and everybody will be able to make the comments. So I welcome all of that. But I look forward to taking this whole plan forward, and I will be supporting the Reg 18. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Sphere. Councillor Spray, as proposer, would you like to reply to the speeches before I put the recommendations to the votes? And please can I remind you not to introduce any new matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and you can be sure I will not be introducing any new matters because I've got more than enough to be going on with. I want to just first thank all members across the chamber for their contributions, their comments, their questions. Really good, actually very good contributions indeed. I am going to respond briefly to most of them. I'm going to wrap some of them up because quite a lot of you spoke on similar topics. But I would just repeat what my colleague Councillor Schwer has just said, which is to encourage all members to put your contributions in through the Regulation 18 consultation. You, as ward members, are as entitled as anyone to put the comments into the consultation. You know, we hope, and I'm pretty sure that residents will, I've no doubt that developers and agents will, but please, I would encourage you as district councillors to also have your say. Doing it through the Reg 18 consultation ensures that your views will be captured, they will then be looked at by officers, they will be reviewed and discussed by the local plan subcommittee, and you will get answers to questions. So please do that. Just to go over some of the points that were raised, and I'll start with Councillor Thorogood. He and many others mentioned the A12, A120, and the lack of progress with that. I've got quite a lot of you down as mentioning that. Please be assured we will continue to put pressure on the government to come forward with the upgrades that we need. But we cannot afford, for the reasons I gave, we cannot afford to pause our draft local plan while we wait for a hopefully positive response from the government. We simply don't have the time to do that, and if we don't have a local plan presented to the inspectorate, and I sincerely hope found sound, it leaves us absolutely open to speculative development which we will have no control over. So we need to carry on with this draft local plan and with the process, and at the same time, as I say, please be assured we will continue to pressurise the government on doing the right thing by us. Councillor Beavis talked about the increase in the target from 716, which was our previous annual target. Well, yes, and the reason this task has become harder is because of the new target we have. But I do agree with one or two speakers, I think it was Councillor Edwards towards the end, who said, actually, yeah, we support the house building. We know we need new homes. It feels, and it does still feel like quite a tough target for this district. But nevertheless, we are absolutely making our best efforts to reach that target. But it doesn't make it easy when you're trying to allocate sites. The Halstead bypass, Councillor Beavis asked when. Well, the problem in a way with the Halstead bypass, which is no small thing, is it actually requires housing development to make it happen. It isn't supportable otherwise. The hope is that by allocating the homes that we are around Halstead, it will enable that to happen. And we've had positive indications, I'll put it no more strongly than that, from developers and a number of them who are prepared to work together to bring this about. I've noted Councillor Finken's comments about the routing of the bypass and the maps. I'm sure officers have as well, so we'll take a look at that and come back on that one. A number of members spoke about infrastructure coming first before development. Councillor Dervish, when she talked about Hatfield Peveril. Councillor Abrams talked about development in and around his patch and Coggeshall, and others have spoken about it as well. It has always been the aim of this local authority, not just with this local plan, to have infrastructure first before we build thousands of homes. And that is our aim. It always has been, and it will remain so. Bringing forward things like health centres, schools, open spaces or so on comes via Section 106. The A12, A120, of course, is a much more difficult thing, but we are still determined to do our absolute best to try and make, especially the very large sites, sustainable by having a suitable road infrastructure. Infrastructure first is absolutely important. Councillor Holland, countryside policies, I've noted those. I know that officers have as well. They are important. There are a couple of changes, yes, to the hamlet policies and so on. So we will take a look at that. But again, I encourage you to please put forward those comments through the consultation. Councillor Abbott, Councillor Parker mentioned north sites to the north of the district. Well, I would just say to Councillor Abbott, we did actually look twice at potential developments to the north, because I think he was one of the members of the local plan subcommittee who suggested that we go back and look again, which we did. There are some small sites coming forward to the north. Councillor Garrett, I'm pleased to hear, thinks there are maybe a couple of small sites around her patch. So yes, you know, the numbers help even if they are small, but it became fairly obvious when we reviewed it that the large sites are simply not sustainable for the north of the district for the reasons that were given. So yes, all right, it would have been very nice to have had a very big site in the north, but it's not doable. Councillor Staines, despite my absolute best efforts to scribble down the points that you made, I don't think I got all of them, I got some. West of Braintree, Wethersfield, Section 106, Galliers Corner, infrastructure. I don't think I got all of them down. I'm absolutely confident officers will have done. So we will note these comments, but again, please do come and put them in on the consultation. I think, Councillor Ramage, yes, I knew I wanted to mention this. The comms plan for Reg 18 consultation. There is a very good comms plan already being drawn up. I have a briefing with officers and our comms team towards the end of this week, just to finalise that. There will be ample opportunity and all sorts of different ways that people can contribute, not just online. That is it's the preferred route, because it's easier for officers to pick that up. And the email address, I'll give it out now, but I mean it's going to be absolutely all over everywhere, is planningpolicy@braintree.gov.uk. So quite straightforward. But there will also be information in the local newspapers. There will be site notices going up. We will have information on the BDC webpage. It'll be all over the place. And if you want to write a good old-fashioned letter in, that's absolutely fine too. So there will be no shortage of ways that people can contribute. The consultation, yes, will be starting in about 2 weeks' time. Will run for 6 weeks. Brownfield sites. Councillor Heath, thank you for your comments on that. I can't go into a great deal of detail, but I know that discussions are ongoing with at least one landowner of brownfield sites. But that's, sort of in progress. But it's not appropriate for me to go into any great detail on that. I've noted your comments about the bridge. And I think almost finally, the business of planning permissions being given and homes not being built. Yes, a big bugbear for Councillor Bowes-Flint, who was the planning portfolio holder before me. And for me, I've lost count of the number of letters that both of us wrote to so many secretaries of state over the years saying, we are giving planning permissions and we are really good at it in this district, and then they don't get on and build. We've got some significant sites with actually thousands of homes not being built out, and it's immensely frustrating. So we are still trying to persuade the government that the only way this is going to happen is if you penalise the developers. You've got to hit them in the pocket to make them get on and build. So we will continue to try and do that. Have I missed anything very important? Councillor Diamond, actually really good point, talking about professional people, NHS workers and so on, who need affordable housing. Yep, couldn't agree more. We're actually pretty good at delivering affordable housing in this district, but we need to carry on doing that. Thank you to several members who said, well done for how I've been chairing local plan subcommittee, but I do want to say the meetings have been, I think, really good. I want to thank the members of the subcommittee. There's been an awful lot of reading to do, and there's going to be an awful lot more to come. But it's worked well, and I've actually enjoyed chairing them. I want to add my thanks to officers as well. The planning policy team, supported by Sarah as head of planning and by some of the colleagues in development management team, they're only a small team actually, and they've got a tremendous amount of work to do to get this over the line. So I want to thank them very much. They are really hard at it. I hope I haven't left off anything really important. I hope I've covered most people's comments, but thank you everybody very much, and please put your comments in through the consultation. Really important. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spray. And members, yes, I do hope that you've had a response to the points that you've made, but I would echo those comments. Make sure they are added into the consultation, because they will be taken seriously, and I think that process will be underway in due course. So, members, the recommendations are set out in section 2 of the report on pages 5 and 6 of the agenda, and they have been moved and seconded. Councillor Abbott, I can see your...
Point of order, do we take them separately, Mr Chairman? Because we don't.
I'll just...
You either vote for all of them or vote against all of them.
We would normally take them as a whole. Okay, thank you, Councillor Abbott. So we will be taking them as a whole. So all those in favour of the recommendations, please indicate. Just keep your hand raised while we take that. All those against the recommendations, please indicate. And any abstentions? Okay, members. The majority voted in favour, so the recommendations have been approved. So members, this item concludes the business for this evening's meeting. Please can I remind you that the next meeting of full council is on Monday the 16th of February. At this meeting we will be considering the council's budget. Thank you all for your attendance and participation at this evening's meeting, and to those watching the council's YouTube channel. The recording of this meeting will be published on the Council's YouTube channel as soon as possible, and I will formally close the meeting of full Council at 9:30. Thank you, members. Thank you, public. Have a good evening.